Today, we are going to be looking at the single best Pokemon of each and every typing. Yes, we are going to be choosing 18 different Pokemon that best represent all 18 types. And pretty much everything is going to be fair game for this selection. From the anime to the games to even other spin-off media. We'll be taking all of it into account to figure out just who is the face of each Pokemon type. But before I begin, I first want to say that for this video, there will be no repeated Pokemon if they're multi-typed. What I mean is, if I pick Gyarados as the best water Pokemon, then I can't also pick Gyarados to be the best flying type too. Got it? Got it. Oh, and also, there's a hidden giveaway somewhere in this video, so be sure to be on the lookout for how to enter, because it's gonna be massive. Alright then, with all of that out of the way, let's get right into it. The best grass-type Pokemon is Bulbasaur. So right away, I do have to say that this was one of the more difficult decisions in this entire video. There's just loads of great grass types, but I ultimately decided on the OG here with Bulbasaur. I mean, Bulbasaur is literally number one, and I just really believe it to be the one true face of the grass typing. And my reasoning for this tough decision is as follows. First, it is the first Pokemon in the entire Dex. And beyond that, there's a high chance that it was possibly the first Pokemon that you ever used or even laid your eyes on. And also, in pretty much every Kanto game, Bulbasaur is objectively the best starter to use. Second, Ash Ketchum's Bulbasaur is easily one of his most iconic and most reliable Pokemon that he has ever had. It was just always such a beast in battle, and it did set the precedent in the anime that you don't have to evolve to be powerful. And third, the Pokemon version of Wikipedia is literally named after Bulbasaur. I know this is kind of an obscure fact, but it definitely helps the Bulbasaur brand, and it's super helpful to me when I make these videos. To close on Bulbasaur, he's just one awesome Pokemon, and very well deserving of the title of the best grass-type Pokemon. Now, I will be doing a few honorable mentions for most of these sections, and here for the grass typing, we have both Sceptile and Shaman earning the nod. The best fire type Pokemon is Charizard. So this selection here was an absolute no-brainer. Charizard really needs no introduction or explanation, but I'll still give him one. It's easily one of, if not the most iconic Pokemon ever. I'd be willing to bet that a good 83% of Earth's population knows who Charizard is. Part of that is that it is just an objectively awesome and iconic Pokemon. It's a fire-breathing massive dragon, which is about as cool as it gets. And the other part of it is that Pokemon loves to jam it down our throats. Now, whenever there's a new battle mechanic introduced, you already know that Charizard is first in line to get a new form. Or even whenever there's a new, powerful trainer in the anime, his ace is probably gonna be a Charizard. And I haven't even mentioned that Charizard has been in 3 different Smash Bros. Games. Even the one where the other Cantonian starters got cut. But, I mean, this all kind of works, as Charizard has essentially become the second mascot of the series. In-game, Charizard's strength has greatly varied over the years. In most Kanto games, he's actually the worst starter to use in a playthrough, but even with everyone knowing that, Charmander is still the most picked starter. But while he might not be the best in a traditional playthrough, he's always been pretty solid and competitive. And this is thanks in large part to all of those power-ups it gets every new generation. Of course, Charizard has also received just as much attention in the anime series as well. I think we all remember Ash's and just how awesome it was. It was his original hard-hitting powerhouse that even went through a pretty solid story arc as well. But then there's also Alon's Megazard and Leon's OP Charizard as well. Or even in the spin-off origin stories, Red's starter and ace was a Charizard as well. Over the years, it's become abundantly clear that Charizard does receive special treatment. He's got 2 Mega Forms, he's all over the anime, and he has the most expensive card in Pokemon TCG history. It's actually gotten to the point where Charizard is so beloved that now he's actually kind of hated. But regardless of that though, there really is no doubt that Charizard is the most iconic and best fire type ever. And there's also no denying that he is a top 2 Pokemon of all time. As I said earlier, this selection wasn't that much of a competition, but I will give an honorable mention to both Reshiram and Ho-Oh. The best water-type Pokemon is Greninja. Now, I really wanted to give this spot to Gyarados, as it is a Gen 1 juggernaut who proves that you really can't judge a book by its cover. But after doing a lot of research and reflecting, I ultimately just had to take Greninja. Since 2013, Greninja has become one of the most beloved Pokemon ever, and I can easily say it is certainly the most iconic modern Pokemon as well. When X and Y first released, Greninja quickly separated itself from the other Colossian starters, as it was definitely the most powerful and it also boasted the best design. But its popularity shot through the roof thanks to Ash's Greninja in the XYZ anime. It was there that the Ninja Frog took center stage and quickly became one of Ash's best Pokemon ever. And it was able to become even stronger thanks to the introduction of the legendary Ash Greninja form. The same form that became so popular in fact that it was introduced into the mainline games one generation later. And believe me when I tell you, it made an already amazing Pokemon ridiculously OP. This new form essentially worked as a free Mega Evolution without actually being a Mega. So knowing this, it should come as no surprise that Ash Greninja was quickly banished to the Uber tier. Meanwhile, I haven't even mentioned that Greninja is in Smash, and Sakurai actually chose to add him to the roster before any of the hype from the games or the anime. He chose to add Greninja strictly based on design, and, well, he most certainly made the right decision there. So between the anime, games, and its inclusion into Smash Bros., it should come as no real surprise that in 2020, Greninja won a poll ran by Google to decide who the most popular Pokemon was, as decided by fans. And it really wasn't all that close either. In closing on Greninja, I'd argue that without it, Pokemon just wouldn't have sustained the test of time as well as it has. During the Gen 5 era, a lot of longtime fans were kind of phasing out of the series. But, thanks in large part to Greninja, the series found a second wind and still chugs on to this very day. As for honorable mentions for the water type, I've chosen both Gyarados and Blastoise. The best electric type Pokemon is Pikachu. Now this selection was the easiest choice on the entire list. I mean, what even needs to be said about Pikachu? He's literally the face of the entire franchise. I'd even go as far as to say that Pikachu is so iconic in fact, that he's a top 3 character in all of fiction, right up there with the likes of Mickey Mouse and Superman. I guess the only real fault one can have with Pikachu is that he's never really been that good in game. But it has at the very least received a fair share of power-ups and boosts throughout the years to make it a little bit more viable. Between the Light Ball, its Z-move, and its Gigantamax form, it's always been able to kind of keep up. But come on, you're never really gonna use a Pikachu in a normal battle. I honestly am not gonna go too in-depth as to what makes Pikachu the best electric type, because it quite literally transcends all of pop culture and fiction itself. I haven't even mentioned that Pikachu is Ash Ketchum's day 1 plot armor having best buddy, who has appeared in almost 2,000 anime episodes. But because of Pikachu's iconic status as mascot and face of the entire franchise, I just simply couldn't give any other electric types an honorable mention, as it would kind of be disrespectful to Pikachu. Hey guys, thanks for watching up to this point in the video. But we're going to be taking a quick pause here so I can announce the rules of my giveaway. To celebrate my channel closing in on 300,000 subscribers, I'm going to be giving away an awesome Pokemon merchandise mystery box. Now I'm not going to be revealing everything that'll be inside, but it will include at least the following: multiple TCG packs, PSA graded cards, a couple small plushies, a few Pokemon Funko Pops, and much, much more. To enter, all you have to do is drop a big like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment who your all-time favorite Pokemon is and why it's your favorite. And that's it. Once I hit 300,000, I will announce the winner. And with that being said, good luck to all who enter, and let's get back into the video. The best normal type Pokemon is Arceus. There were a ton of great options to choose from, but I kinda just had to choose the god of the entire universe. Canonically speaking, without Arceus, none of these other mons would even exist. And that brings me to the first pillar of Arceus that I would like to highlight. It's lore. As I said, it's literally the god of the Pokemon universe, which is about the coolest title a character in fiction can have. With a little help from the rest of the creation quartet and its thousands of arms, the Pokemon universe was created in Arceus' image. Then, when it comes to strength and power, Arceus has consistently been one of the strongest Pokemon since Generation 4. It has an even base stat of 120 in every single statistic, which ultimately means Arceus can do anything. Especially thanks to its ability Multi-Type, which allows it to be any typing it wants. Finally, Arceus is the titular character and star of Legends Arceus, which is quite honestly one of the best Pokemon games we've gotten in decades. It was a totally new and fresh spin on the series, and I, like many others, absolutely adored it. With this game also came our first ever legit legendary encounter we have ever gotten with Arceus in the entire series. You see, back in Generation 4, we were robbed of what should have been an epic battle with it. However, Legends Arceus finally delivered us a worthy showdown with the god of the Pokemon universe. In all, there may be no other Pokemon with such interesting and rich lore as Arceus himself. And similarly, there really has never been a Mon quite as consistently powerful as Arceus either. It's because of all of this that I just had to choose it to be the greatest normal type in all of Pokemon. As for some normal type honorable mentions, I've chosen both Snorlax and Eevee. The best fighting type Pokemon is Lucario. What's funny about Lucario is that most of the points that I made about Greninja are the same about Lucario as well. However, Lucario just did it first. He was in Smash Bros. First, he had a bond with Ash Ketchum first, and he ultimately became a pop culture icon first. Let's first begin with Lucario's epic introduction. Lucario burst onto the big screen as it became the titular character of the Lucario and the Mystery of Mew film. And up until this point, titular roles in the films were exclusive to legendary Pokemon. So many fans, including myself, kind of expected Lucario to be a legendary. Then, when Lucario was introduced into the games in Generation 4, it was very interesting to learn that he was in fact just a normal Pokemon. And even with that, still pretty much everyone used a Lucario in their playthroughs of the Sinnoh games. And since then, Lucario has remained one of the greatest and most beloved Pokemon in the entire Dex. It's always just been so reliable in battle and can be used in a multitude of different ways. But then, Lucario was able to get even stronger in Gen 6 with the introduction of its Mega form. With adaptability and its juiced up stats, Mega Lucario quickly became one of the most OP Megas ever. And actually, you can pretty much solo the entire Kalos region with that one Karina hands you early on in X and Y. So knowing this, it shouldn't really come as a big surprise that many of the strongest NPCs across the Pokemon universe will end up using a Lucario, and oftentimes it's actually the ace of their teams. And finally, it was so awesome to see Ash Ketchum use a Lucario in the Journeys anime. After basically 2 decades worth of teasing us, we finally got it in Ash's final series. And it was incredible to see it become his regional ace, as well as his one and only Mega Evolving Pokemon. Now this was another typing that didn't have a whole lot of competition, as Lucario stands head and shoulders above really all other fighting type Pokemon. But I will at the very least give an honorable mention to both Blaziken and Infernape. The best flying type Pokemon is Rayquaza. I mean, Ray Ray is literally the god of the skies, so how could he not take the title of best flying type ever? But seriously, everything about Rayquaza is legitimately so awesome. He honestly might be the hardest working Pokemon in the entire game, as he has to deal with both Groudon and Kyogre, but then, when it comes to Deoxys, it's on sight. So yeah, Rayquaza really is kind of like the guardian of the Pokemon world. especially at an atmospheric level. And when it comes to battling, Rayquaza honestly is a part of the GOAT debate. Since Generation 3, Ray has always been a massively hard hitter, but it went to a whole different level when the ORAS games were released, and I'm sure you know why. Mega Rayquaza is easily one of, if not the most busted Pokemon in history. It has insane stats, an insane move pool, and most insane of it all is that you don't even need a Mega Stone to make it evolve. And to give Mega Ray even more clout, in ORAS, we got to head into space with it to once again spin the block on that fraud Deoxys. And I haven't even mentioned my own personal glaze for Rayquaza either. It is my all-time favorite legendary, and Emerald is also my all-time favorite Pokemon game. But, even personal bias aside, I think this entry is a non-negotiable. Everyone knows that Rayquaza is the king of the skies, and so, that makes him the best flying type ever. But I do have to give an honorable mention to both Staraptor and Talonflame. The best rock type is Rhydon. Now here's what's likely the biggest surprise up to this point in the video. And while this one kind of is a personal pick, I do have to mention that Rhydon has played a major role in the development of the Pokemon series. If you didn't know, Rhydon was actually the first ever Pokemon created many years ago. It did look a little bit different, but this very Mon did end up becoming Rhydon when it was all said and done. And it's because of this that I'd argue that Rhydon definitively asserts himself as one of the most important Pokemon of all time. But beyond that, I always just viewed Rhydon as such an awesome Pokemon. From a design standpoint alone, I really think that Rhydon encapsulates what works great about a Pokemon design. It boasts an epic and menacing design, while also being simple and not too complicated. And it even looks like a very natural progression from Rhyhorn as well. Unfortunately for Rhydon, its debut in the anime was totally ruined. This was thanks in large part to Pikachu's old aim for the horn strategy that Ash was able to pull off. But much later during the Johto series, we did get an awesome episode focused on a surfing Rhydon. I know I for one always loved this episode, and I found it to be so cool that Rhydon was able to overcome its biggest weakness in water. In closing on Rhydon, it has always been such a solid Pokemon, and arguably one of the most influential of all time. As for honorable mentions here for the rock type, I definitely gotta give a shout out to both Tyranitar and Lycanroc. The best ground type Pokemon is Zygarde. If you ask me, Zygarde might just be the most interesting Pokemon ever. Initially, there really wasn't all that much to him, as we found him just sitting there in Terminus Cave. But due to the previous trends of Pokemon games, we kind of expected a much bigger role for Zygarde in the upcoming Pokemon Z game. But Pokemon Z never came out, and Zygarde never got its chance in the spotlight. However, in the XYZ anime, we were able to learn a lot more about Zygarde, its multiple forms, and the Zygarde cells. It really seemed like there was a lot more than meets the eye with this Pokemon, and I know we all got hype when we got that 100% transformation scene during the Team Flare arc. But then, when it came to the games, Zygarde was kind of just jammed into Sun and Moon as a bit of an afterthought. I mean, it was present in the games, but it just didn't feel right, and it didn't do the legendary Pokemon justice. But I'm confident that all of these wrongs will be righted later this year with Legend Z. And even with kind of a rocky career while in-game, Zygarde still has some really great lore, and all three of his forms are unique and awesome. Meanwhile in battle, Zygarde has remained one great Pokemon in competitive ever since Generation 6. With access to moves like Dragon Dance, E-Speed, Thousand Arrows, and Outrage, it can quickly turn into a monster. I know for me, I've never been more excited for an upcoming Pokemon game than I am for Pokemon Legends Z to A. My GOAT Zygarde will finally get his long-awaited and much-deserved time in the spotlight. The only ground-type honorable mention will go to Groudon. The best poison-type Pokemon is Gengar. Now, Gengar is easily one of the greatest Pokemon ever. However, even I have to admit that it really isn't that great of a poison type. But my selection for the ghost typing was a no-brainer, so I did settle on sticking Gengar here in the poison typing. So I honestly believe that Gengar is a Pokemon with absolutely zero haters. While mons like Greninja can get hate for getting too much attention, or a mon like Charizard gets hate for receiving special treatment, I can honestly say that I have never heard anyone ever hating on Gengar. And actually, much like Charizard, Gengar has received multiple forms, including a Mega and also a Gigantamax. So when it comes to battling, Gengar has always been amongst the best of the best. Unlike many other Gen 1 mons, Gengar has gotten better with time and aged like fine wine. Originally, Gengar's typing was pretty underwhelming, but both the Ghost and Poison typings have gotten much better over the years. While in its base form, Gengar has remained a speedy sweeper since the start of Pokemon. However, it is easily at its strongest with its Mega form. If you have never experienced what it's like to battle a Mega Gengar, then I'd argue that you have never actually experienced true pain. Knowing all of this, it should come as no real surprise that many notable trainers, including Agatha, Morty, Karen, Silver, Fantina, and Alistair, all use a Gengar on their respective teams. And more often than not, they're also the ace of their teams as well. And of course, Ash Ketchum used a Gengar on his final team in Pokemon Journeys. This Gengar went through an incredible story arc, beginning as an abandoned Pokemon that quickly went from zero to hero once joining Ash's team. And ultimately, Gengar would go down to become one of the most powerful Pokemon in anime history, and one of the biggest reasons as to why Ash was able to become world champion. It is undoubtedly among the top 10 most iconic and most beloved Pokemon ever. And this was actually proven in that same 2020 Google poll I keep bringing up. The best bug-type Pokemon is Scizor. So initially in Generation 1, the bug typing was an absolute joke. It was far and away the worst typing in the entire game, and it was more or less just used in the early game. However, that all changed in Generation 2 with the introduction of Scizor. From an aesthetic standpoint, I absolutely love Scizor's design. It's simple, sleek, and just looks so clean. And when it comes to battle, Scizor really did put the bug typing on the map, and what's even more impressive is that he stood the test of time. It can work decently well as a wall, but I definitely think it's at its best as a sweeper. With Swords Dance and a Technician Bug Bite or Bullet Punch, pretty much nothing is gonna enjoy taking a hit from Scizor. And that's not to mention that Scizor did indeed receive a powerful Mega that juiced up all of its stats, and even made it tankier while also hitting much harder. The only really negative thing I can say about Scizor is that it is a trait evolution, and because I have no friends, I've never really been able to use one. But if I could, I would definitely use Scizor as much as possible, because that's how incredible of a Pokemon it really is. Its design is an easy 10 out of 10. Its strength in battle is also a 10 out of 10. And finally, its cry in the anime is also a 10 out of 10. Scizor! The two honorable mentions for the bug typing have gotta go to Heracross and Volcarona, as they both also broke the weak bug stereotype. The best ice type Pokemon is Kyurem. Much like the bug typing, the ice type is widely regarded as one of the worst in the entire series. Up until Generation 5, we did receive some solid ice types, but none were really all that great or even usable. But then in Unova, we got one of the coolest and most interesting Pokemon in the whole series with Kyurem. Now originally, there wasn't that much to it. In the first Black and White games, it was just a boring legendary found deep within the post-game. But then in the sequel games, Kyurem got all of its power and its lore fully revealed to us as it took a leading role in the main story. In Black 2 and White 2, Ghetsis uses Kyurem as an instrument to achieve his goals by forcibly fusing it with either Zekrom or Reshiram. And by doing this, Kyurem's stats and power skyrocket to an astonishing 700 BST. But beyond strength, it's what Kyurem represents that is most intriguing to me. Kyurem itself represents the void that is left behind after Unity is broken. If you didn't know, Zekrom and Reshiram were once a single Pokemon that represented both truths and ideals. But when the two brothers who controlled the dragon disagreed about their truths and ideals, the dragon ultimately split, and Kyurem is what remained. This complexity and depth of a single Pokemon is incredible, and something we really haven't ever seen besides here. Now, I know I've only really highlighted its lore and role in the story, but Kyurem is great in battle. In its base form, it performs alright, but when it's fused, it can deal some massive damage. After Zygarde, I definitely think that Kyurem is the next Pokemon that should be getting its own Legends game. While it is definitely a layered and interesting Pokemon, I can confidently say that there is still much more to learn about Kyurem. The best Ghost-type Pokemon is Giratina. The Pokemon Devil simply had to take this spot. Like Kyurem and Rayquaza, it is the third legendary from its respective region. So that of course means it got the chance to gain a lot more popularity, development, and time in the spotlight once its own game came out. Especially when we consider that Giratina's game is arguably the best in the entire Pokemon series. But as for a Pokemon itself, Giratina is about as awesome as it gets. You don't know what cool is until you've seen its entrance in Spear Pillar. Obviously, with all the awesomeness of Giratina also comes some incredible lore. Giratina was banished to what is essentially the Shadow Realm, or better known as the Distortion World. A world where the laws of physics just do not apply. I remember my first time ever going through the Distortion World while in Platinum. It was an unforgettable experience, and it climaxed with a once-in-a-lifetime battle. Of course, both of Giratina's forms are just epic looking, and the 666 appendages amongst its body is a subtle and genius addition to this Pokemon. In closing on the devil of the Pokemon world, it's bold, misunderstood, and one incredible legendary. The only Ghost-type Pokemon that earns an honorable mention here is Mimikyu. The best Psychic-type Pokemon is Mewtwo. This was another extremely easy selection, as Mewtwo is literally one of the top 3 most important Pokemon of all time. You see, Mewtwo checks every single box of what makes for a perfect Pokemon. He's been an absolute monster in battle since the very start. Every battle with him is a total challenge. He's been in multiple Smash Bros. Games, and he does all of this while being a pop culture icon. Many of you watching probably weren't around when it first came out, but the first ever Pokemon movie instantly became a worldwide phenomenon, and the film pretty much shattered all box office records when it comes to anime movies. And it's because of that Mewtwo is probably one of those few Pokemon that even your mother would be able to name. You really can't put into words just how important Mewtwo is to the franchise. In the games, Mewtwo essentially works as the original super boss of the series. Beating the Elite Four and Champion is one thing while in Kanto, but you can't really say you've beat the games till you've captured Mewtwo. But while we are now on the subject of the games, let's quickly discuss how good Mewtwo has been. And, well, it's always been insanely busted. But beyond all of that, Mewtwo has received loads of love and attention in other sources of Pokemon media as well. It has been in 3 different Smash Bros. Games, and Mewtwo has starred in many of the Pokemon films. It is without a doubt one of the most important and influential Pokemon of all time, and Mewtwo is far and away the best Psychic-type Pokemon ever. The best Dark-type Pokemon is Umbreon. Finally, we find ourselves with the first evolution here in this video, and in my opinion, Umbreon is easily the best of the bunch. While it probably isn't the best evolution when it comes to battling, Umbreon honestly has a perfect design. It's so simple, yet so visually stunning. And I have a strong feeling that I'm not the only one who feels this way, as since 2020, pretty much every Umbreon TCG card has been selling for sick amounts of money. And this has really helped bolster its popularity even decades after its introduction. Beyond just having a perfect design, Umbreon has also played a major role in the success of the franchise. As you probably know, the Dark typing wasn't introduced to the series until Generation 2, so a lot of pressure kind of fell onto Umbreon, but boy did it live up to the hype. I'm pretty confident that I can speak for us all and say that Umbreon is definitely the face of the dark typing. And I just find this to be so fascinating because many of the other dark types are much more aggressive looking. But Umbreon really doesn't need any of that. Umbreon's sets in battle are pretty simple. It's really just used to sponge hits and stall, and it does a very, very good job of doing just that. As for honorable mentions for the dark typing, they have both got to go to Tyranitar and Darkrai. The best steel type Pokemon is Metagross. Now this decision was tough as nails. Over the years, the steel typing has gotten better and better while also having some incredible Pokemon. Much like the dark typing, the steel type was introduced in Generation 2, but unlike dark, there really wasn't that many good steel type Pokemon added. Really, the only good steel type that I can think of is Scizor, and I mean, I already picked him for the bug typing. But then, everything changed in Generation 3 with the introduction of the part spider, part supercomputer, and all-around menace that is Metagross. The first thing about Metagross that I do want to highlight is that it is in fact a pseudo-legendary. So with that, there obviously comes some inherent strength. But Metagross separates itself from the others by not actually being a dragon type. And I'd actually argue that this actually helps Metagross reach higher highs because, as I said, over the years, the steel typing has only gotten better. But besides its typing, Metagross is obviously still quite juiced statistically. It can hit hard, but it can also tank some hits too. However, when it goes Mega, it gains some much needed speed, and with that also comes its new Tough Claws ability. It's able to go from an OP pseudo to a downright busted Mega. And while Metagross has always been an incredible Pokemon in battle, it's funny that even after 6 whole generations, Metagross is still to this very day synonymous with one Pokemon trainer. That, of course, being the handsome and drippy Steven Stone. I cannot tell you how many times Steven's Metagross has sent me back to the Pokemon Center. In both the originals and in the remakes, this thing always gave me fits. It was also really cool to see Steven use a shiny Mega Meta in the anime. That thing was an absolute monster, even if it did kind of fall victim to plot armor in the Masters 8. In closing on Metagross, it is definitely the best Steel-type Pokemon. And as for the honorable mentions for the Steel typing, I gotta give it to both Dialga and Aegislash. The best Fairy-type Pokemon is Sylveon. Originally, I wanted to end the video with my selection for the best Fairy-type Pokemon, and instead give this time slot to the Dragon typing. But the pick here for Fairy was an absolute layup, and I wanted to leave my controversial Dragon-type pick for the very end of the video. So as I stated earlier during the Umbreon entry, the evolutions are some of the most Pokemon in the entire Pokedex. And whenever Game Freak introduces a new typing, they also add a brand new evolution to help show it off. But what's unique about Sylveon is that the Mon itself was revealed before the typing. And this kind of led to loads of speculation during the pre-XY era, as everyone was wondering as to what typing Sylveon can be. This was honestly a genius decision by Game Freak, as it had pretty much everyone talking about Sylveon. Then, once the Fairy typing did get revealed, it all made sense. And it was almost ingrained in all of our heads that Sylveon was the poster mon for this new typing. And so with that, I just had to put it here as the best Fairy-type Pokemon. Now, when it comes to battling, Sylveon definitely isn't the strongest Fairy-typer of all time. But since its creation, it's always been pretty solid, especially on the special side of things. And of course, naturally, Sylveon has gotten a ton of attention in other forms of Pokemedia. I, for one, really adored Serena's in the X and Y anime. It was an incredibly fitting Pokemon for her, and its evolution scene was actually really awesome too. Overall, I'd say that Sylveon has played a pivotal role in modern Pokemon history. It was put in a position to become the poster mon for this brand new typing introduced in Gen 6, and it really hasn't looked back since. Really, there are only 2 Pokemon that deserve an honorable mention for the Fairy typing, those being both Gardevoir and Xerneas. And finally, the best Dragon-type Pokemon is Dragonite. I did in fact save the toughest for last here with the Dragon typing. Pretty much everyone views the Dragon typing to be the most powerful in the entire franchise, and with it comes a wide variety of great Pokemon. But overall, when we're talking about the best of the best for the best typing, it really only came down to two options. Both Dragonite and Garchomp are insanely powerful, ice-fearing monsters that are in fact the aces of some of the most powerful champions in the entire franchise. But I ultimately gave Dragonite the edge because he's the OG. Yeah, call it cliche, but Dragonite was the first Dragon type ever, and he kinda had to hold it down for essentially 2 whole generations. I also gotta give Dragonite some major props for standing the test of time. While pretty much every other pseudo has received some special form, move, power-up, or whatever, Dragonite has gotten nothing because he doesn't need it. The only nice buff that Game Freak has ever given it is making its hidden ability multi-scale, and that's it. In 9 generations, that's all the love Dragonite has ever gotten from the developers. And finally, the last pillar that earned Dragonite this spot is that Ash Ketchum used an absolutely awesome Dragonite in the anime. Meanwhile, we only got kind of teased about Ash using a Garchomp. But while we are on the topic, Ash's Dragonite was quickly able to become one of his most beloved and most powerful Pokemon ever. I remember when Ash first caught Dragonite, it literally set the internet ablaze. Then throughout the series, she was just a monster, and backpacked Ash through some very tough matches. Finally, let's discuss Dragonite in the games. As I said earlier, Dragonite has stood the test of time and been able to keep up with power creep. I mean, having access to the move Dragon Dance to boost its already juiced up stats is obviously gonna go a long way. To close out on this entry for Dragonite, it really just does everything right. It forever set the standard, not just for what a great Dragon type is supposed to be, but it also set the standard for what makes for a great pseudo-legendary. And finally, as I said earlier, I will give an honorable mention to Garchomp. Well guys, that's that. Those are who I believe to be the best Pokemon of each type. I really hope you enjoyed this video as I put a ton of time and effort into it. If you did enjoy, can you please give me a fat thumbs up? And also, don't forget to enter the giveaway as the winner will probably be announced soon. Thanks guys.